Greetings to everyone! A slight change of scenery in today's video. In August I visited the UK's first Dolby cinema and I really want to share my impressions with you. Before I start, I'd like to remind you that you can subscribe to this channel, follow me on Instagram or even consider supporting future videos on Patreon. You will find all the links in the description. So this is the famous Leicester Square Odeon. This cinema hosts most UK movie premieres. Renovation works were completed in December 2018 and it became the first commercial Dolby cinema in the United Kingdom. I wanted to visit it as soon as it had reopened, but for some reason they had decided to sell tickets for £30 per person, which, let's say, abated my curiosity. On top of that, the pandemic struck in the beginning of 2020 and all the cinemas around the UK were temporarily closed. After all the COVID restrictions had been lifted in summer 2021 and cinemas finally reopened, Odeon reduced its ticket price. This fact resurrected my idea to visit Dolby Cinema. Here we are. It looks new and shiny, but I'm more interested in technical aspects of the cinema than interiors. Let's take a look inside the auditorium. To produce this video, I went there 4 times. Every time I sat in a different seat to build a more comprehensive impression of the cinema. First, let me share my thoughts about the screen. The image quality was amazing. Colors and dynamic range just blew my mind, especially when they played the demonstrational clip before the start of the movie. The contrast was just stunning. However, the screen size wasn't enough for such a huge auditorium. During my first visit, I sat at row F, and even there, the screen was not covering much of my side field. During my second, third and fourth visits, I sat in the middle of row A, L and H accordingly. At row A, also known as the Royal Circle, the screen size was still acceptable. However, at any row further than that, the screen became way too small. In comparison, my 55-inch TV at home covers same area of my field of view as when I sat at row L. If you prefer a bigger image, you have to choose Royal Circle or stalls. 2 more things which were making the viewing experience a little bit less immersive. First one is these sculptures on both sides of the screen. I understand that they probably have some historical value, but the thing is that they are reflecting light that comes from the screen, and that creates a significant distraction from the action on the screen. The second thing which I found very distracting was the ceiling lights, which stayed on all through the movie. Don't get me wrong, they were very dim, but in my opinion, for fully immersive experience, it has to be a pitch black auditorium. Now let me share my thoughts on sound. The quality of sound was really impressive. Medium and high frequencies were detailed and crisp, and the rumbling bass shook my seat. There was a little bit more bass when I was sitting in stalls. The whole sound spectrum was well balanced, but the overall sound level was a little bit too high for me, especially when I sat in the Royal Circle. I was able to identify some of the speakers. 8 subs, which were rigged to the ceiling, were SLS CS218XL cinema subwoofers. Their operating frequency range is between 29 and 300 Hz, 102 decibels sensitivity. Each of these subs weighs 148 pounds or 67 kilograms and can handle up to 1200 watts of power. It is 9600 watts of low frequency power hanging from the ceiling in total. Not sure what was going on behind the screen, as speakers were not backlit before the movie as they usually are in IMAX cinemas. My guess would be that all the LFE speakers are rigged to the ceiling and there are 3 or possibly 5 full-range speakers behind the screen. Most of the surround and overhead speakers are SLS MA460AS or MA480AS two-way coaxial loudspeakers. It is really hard to identify the exact model as they look identical visually. I will leave a link in the description so you can familiarize yourself with the technical specifications of both models. Also, I have spotted smaller Procella audio surround speakers which were located in more confined spaces where SLS speakers wouldn't fit. I am still very curious which speakers have they used behind the screen. Maybe Odeon will invite me for an official tour one day. We'll see. Unfortunately, there were some sound flaws which I need to mention. During my first visit I was sitting at row F and there were no overhead speakers above that spot, so I missed half of Dolby Atmos experience. Even when I was sitting in the Royal Circle, I still didn't get enough overhead effect as these speakers were focused on the middle of the row G and H. The sad truth is that you have to choose between a full Dolby Atmos experience or a larger image. By the way, the sweet spot could have been bigger, but for some reason there is a staircase right in the middle of the auditorium, which consumes space of approximately 80 seats. Another very unpleasant thing was the room acoustics. I have no complaints about loud moments, but dialogues didn't sound so good. I believe that the reverberation time of the room was too long, resulting in the sound of dialogue bouncing and unpleasantly echoing around the room. This effect becomes more noticeable as you sit closer to the screen. My first impression was that these ribs were made of some sort of sound-absorbing material, but as I came closer and knocked on them a couple of times, I have realized it was rather made of some kind of resin and fiberglass mold. Its shape, of course, may diffuse sound a bit, but it's not enough to reduce that reverb time. Oh, and I have to mention that noisy fan located somewhere behind the screen. It was very audible during the quiet moments. Fortunately, I couldn't hear it during my last visits, so hopefully it was fixed. Or I was sitting too far and I couldn't hear it. In conclusion, I want to say that it's not the best screen in the world, but I would go there occasionally as long as they don't increase the ticket price. I would choose seats in the middle of the row G or H. You would have to sacrifice screen size, but there is no point in going to the Dolby Cinema and missing out on a full Atmos experience. Would I recommend it? I'd say yes. Go at least once to see and hear it yourself. There are pros and cons and it will depend on your preferences. For now, BFI IMAX remains my favorite screen in the United Kingdom. Also, there is some exciting news. A brand new Dolby Cinema opened its doors in September, and I have a feeling that it might be more advanced than the current one. Hopefully, I will find out soon. So this is it for this video. Let me know how you find this format and should I make more of this kind of videos about the other cinemas. Don't forget to subscribe to this channel, follow me on Instagram or even consider supporting future videos on Patreon. Thank you very much for watching and I'll see you soon. Goodbye.